Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Patrick Hawe. I'm an associate member of T3 Trading Group, which is an SEC registered broker-dealer and member of FINRA Civic. All trades placed by myself are placed through T3 Trading Group. You should carefully consider whether trading is suitable for you in light of your own financial condition. Position update, no new swings for me today. Forget when the last time I was on YouTube, probably a little bit ago, but for a while it was swing long TLT, so I'm out of that. I got out of that around 98 or so, which was my target. Forget when that was exactly. But other than that, nothing new today. So yeah, Derek is out for this week and next week, so you'll have the pleasure of dealing with either Josh or myself throughout these afternoon meetings. When I do them, I got to keep them a little bit quicker, so I apologize in advance for that. But I cover after hours stuff here for T3's trade desk, so I kind of got to monitor a few things with that. But happy to do some quick reviews and obviously answer any questions anyone has. So yeah, brutal start to the month of September today. I stole the title for my video for YouTube from a recent Bank of America note, which stole it from one of my favorite bands growing up, Green Day, which is Wake Me Up When September Ends. We know that September is usually a bit rocky. It's kind of what I started the morning meeting with today. September can be definitely a bit more volatile. October as well. Sometimes they're both bad. Sometimes it's one or the other. That's kind of what I've seen over the years. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the month starts and we just collapse lower. But this year, that kind of is what we're seeing today. So we got SPY down a whopping 2%, Q's down a whopping 3%. IWM also down 3%, so no real relative strength or weakness there. And SPY not down as much because we got the Dow down 1.5% here, so I guess a little bit of relative strength coming from the Dow. So coming into this morning, markets were gapping down. Part of that seemed to be off of some overnight news from some data overseas. Part of it also, I think, was just we closed really well on Friday, but that was off of an outsized buy-side MOC because Friday, again, was the last, today's the first trading day of September. Friday was the last trading day of August. So Friday was a wider, rangier day, but still kind of a choppy range day where we broke that range in the last 10 minutes of the day with a big buy-side MOC. And we closed on highs. Sometimes we do gap in the opposite direction when you get those bigger sized MOCs into the close. So we were gapping down this morning pretty much across the board. The only thing that wasn't gapping down, which did have some strength today, or at least just held in, was this TLT. But other than that, all the indices were gapping down. IWM was gapping down the most. Q seemed to have a little bit of relative strength coming into the open, but that quickly changed from the open and that relative strength flipped, which sometimes that happens. You can't rely too much on the pre-market. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. It doesn't seem to be too consistent, so you always got to kind of take that with a grain of salt here. But we pretty much opened and sold with the Qs leading that selling. So again, IWM is gapping down more, Qs are gapping down less. Pretty typical. Looked like the Qs had some relative strength. But we opened and the Qs opening price 473.20, high 473.33. Pretty much the open with a tiny 10-13 cent uptick was the high of the day today, and we just sold all day. IWM was a little bit different. IWM actually opened and got bought up. You can see that first 5-minute bar of the day. It's a pretty decent, solid start to the day. Most of the time, that's not going to be immediately negated. Today, it was immediately negated. And again, we just had a really brutal downtrend all day today, with the VIX having a very strong and very orderly uptrend that finally topped a little bit at the end of the day. We had actually another decently sized buy side MOC. It was like 5 billion, 4 billion again today, and that was literally the best bounce we had all day. And the best VIX pull that we had all day was this last 10 minutes or so here. But yeah, just selling all day. It started right off the open. It'll be interesting to see what CNBC chalks up the selling to today. I'm sure I could, and multiple people can make a few reasons. We did have some numbers this morning. I just want to scroll back and refresh everyone's memories, including myself, on them. So we had S&P manufacturing PMI coming at 47.9, 48.1 was the forecast. So that was a miss. That's a little bit bearish. And then ISM manufacturing PMI was 47.2 versus 47.5. It's also a miss. It's also contracting. Both those numbers are contracting. And the big question for the Fed that they're looking at now, which they'll get some further, I mean, today's numbers were definitely important, but they'll get some further clarity into how the economy is doing throughout this week with numbers today. And then the further jobs numbers that we're going to see later throughout this week, including tomorrow is JOLTS. We have ADP Thursday morning, and then the actual August jobs report, I believe, is Friday morning at 8:30. We talked about it a little bit this morning too, and it's been the regime shift for a while now. Fed is definitely more concerned about how hard or soft this landing is going to be. Are we going to have like a real slowdown in the economy versus worrying about inflation? Not to say that they're not worried about inflation. That's something they're always paying attention to, of course. But at this point, they're more focused on, how much damage have they done, and do they need to do damage control with where rates are at? Is Powell acting too slow? Is he, one, acting too slow, and two, not going to act fast enough in general? That's definitely the big question that everyone's asking, and it seems like most people think he is not acting fast enough. This market might have, if he doesn't cut by 50 in September, especially after some of these numbers come out. And again, this market regime, I mean, it's only been one day this week so far. Sorry, give me 1 second here. What is this person messaging me about? Let's find out. Come on. Yes. Give me 10-ish minutes and I'll show you. Sorry. Anyway, so yeah. So we'll see what these jobs numbers are looking like throughout this week, with Friday being the big one that the Fed watches, that just overall monthly jobs number. But this market is probably going to have a problem if Powell does end up cutting by 25 and not 50. Is it that big of a difference? Not really. I think it's more the sentiment that the market might scare the market enough, and people are already starting to worry a little bit that he's not going to act fast enough. But if he cuts by 25 and not 50, I don't think the market's going to like that, and they're going to think he's once again acting too slow, when clearly things are starting to slow. I mean, people still seem to be feeling the pressures from inflation, even though the actual inflation numbers are, coming down. Still feels like rent's going up and groceries are very expensive, and just like kind of basic necessities out there are less and less affordable for the more general middle working class out there. I'm definitely no pro macro economist or anything like that, but just purely based on sentiment from myself, from others around me, from what I hear out there, it's not exactly easy. We got two economic numbers today that both show that we're both in contracting territory and both misses to the downside. And that certainly didn't help the market today. That's for sure. We were already selling before those numbers came out, as you can see just on the 5-minute chart here. But then right at 9:45, that first number came out. The bigger number was at 10, and that triggered another wave down. and it seemed to just be kind of a snowball effect. And this happens sometimes. It happens to the upside too. Honestly, it used back in the day would mostly only happen to the downside. These days, especially with the zero DTE, which seems to add fuel to the fire on the upside a lot, it happens to the upside too. But you kind of just get these snowball effects where some selling triggers some more selling, and then some trend following robots during the day start to press that, and then that triggers more selling. And then finally we got to this 555 level on SPY, which we did hold for a bit here. I mean, this kind of midday action was pretty slow, and we were holding that for a while, but that eventually, the selling was too much for that, and that broke down as well. And we finally broke this range that we've been in for like 2 weeks now. Let me just move this screen over a little bit. There we go. So yeah, so we finally broke this 2 week range here. It was roughly between 564 on the upside and like 555, 554 on the downside. That broke today, and that just again triggered more selling and more trend following. Usually this type of action, this like pure intraday trend like that, it only lasts a day, and that doesn't mean that we don't get a day two down tomorrow. That doesn't mean we can't trend down tomorrow, but today's downtrend was about as clean as you can get. And I mean, hey, this is what happens sometimes. If you're coming in super long into this, you got to have your game plans, you got to have your stops, you got to respect them. Because if you're planning to stop SPY at 558, and then you adjust that to 556, and then 554, and then 552, you start to take on some losses that you really probably shouldn't be taking on if you just stick to that game plan. I've found, at least with my own trading, it's been better to stop and rebuy. And you don't want to fight things. You got to be careful doing that. I always want to emphasize that. But I have found it better for myself, at least, to stop out and rebuy than to, adjust stops and adjust game plans on the fly. And that's why we have our levels, and we keep it simple with the levels. If you're above the level and you're trying to go long, good. If you're not, it's not good. Don't fight it below that key level that you're watching, right? And today was a pretty good example of that. And I thought we did a okay job today. I do admit I definitely could have been better with pressing some of these shorts, but we had a few intraday short call outs. I remember we had like a couple inside fives that we were looking at for SPY. I remember this NVIDIA 112 was holding for a while this morning, and then 112 eventually broke. It was actually, I guess, decently early, like 10:30 or so. Feels like forever ago now, but this 112 was holding throughout the morning in NVIDIA. SPY was making new lows, VIX was making new highs, and I see NVIDIA still selling after hours here too, actually. But the selling was just too great, and that broke. And while it feels at this time like you might be chasing 112 with this short when NVIDIA was at 116 this morning, trends can keep pressing, and now you're looking good with NVIDIA at that it was at 107 a couple minutes ago. Now it's mid 106s here. But again, point being, when you have these trends, you got to respect them. Sometimes they break, you stop out, you take your loss or whatever. But if your risk reward is there and you're risking one to make 2, 3, 4, 5, eventually you get paid. And that's just kind of the day for today. It was just I think a lot of people were caught off guard today. Again, I'm glad that although we could have been a little bit better shorting, I could have been better shorting. We weren't just, trying to buy all day throughout the day. It definitely just, the action didn't seem like that was calling for it. I was really trying not call out any longs per se, but, just why look so aggressively for long plays when clearly we're trending down, clearly the VIX is trending up. It's kind of keeping it simple. Sometimes it's not as easy when the market's actually moving and it's actually open like that, but it's about as simple as it gets. We're trending down, the VIX is up, why fight it, right? So brutal start to the month of September for today. Our daily 2-week range that we've been in has officially broken. And although we probably don't get a pure trend, another 2% down day tomorrow, I'm sure there's some money that's underwater from the past 2 weeks here that may have to be unwound a little more. That being said, today was pretty extreme. Even just going by this SIPC candle here was a pretty extreme day. So sometimes you get a day two. I find more often than not, days after a day like this is a little bit choppier, and you get people that didn't short today and then they're trying to short tomorrow, and we're not really breaking down, and they get frustrated and have to adjust their shorts a bit, stuff like that. And it'll be interesting too to see where short-term tactical sentiment is coming after this close here. We weren't overcooked to the upside by any means, even after Friday's strong close. But this was a pure down day with barely any intraday bounces. So if that's not washed out to the downside tomorrow, it's probably going to be pretty close. So we might actually get that short-term, cute little bounce buy signal at some point this week here. So yeah, that was the day today. Again, hopefully no one got super hurt today. I don't think we were really calling for trades that would have led to that. If you're not following your own game plan, you're not respecting your stops, I mean, that's, kind of on you. But hopefully by now you guys are learning to do that. Morning names that we were looking at this morning, I mean, some of this stuff works okay, but the market just totally ruined it. This Unity got upgraded this morning. We were looking at this either versus 17 or through 1750. That kind of worked off the open, and then you can see, and this is another good example actually. Someone was asking me this morning about, do I keep my pre-market charts up when the market opens, or do I always switch after the open? I always switch after the open to adjust the market, and this is exactly why. It's not always perfect like that, where this ADMA just perfectly catches up and that ends up being the low of the day, but that was like the real low in Unity until the market totally fell apart. And around this time is when we broke that daily level to the downside there. But Unity held 1750, traded up to 18-ish, came back down. It was a big gap up. It was gapping up like 7% from that upgrade this morning. And then this 5-minute EDMA caught up to that low, and that gave it a little bit better of a bounce. But then, as you can see, if I include my pre-market chart here, this is a 50 SMA, so ignore that. You have no idea what's going on if you're trying to follow this pre-market 5-minute ADMA. And that's a good example with why I think it's better to switch to market only after the market's open. But yeah, so Unity somewhat worked. You probably could have made a little bit or broken even off this before it ended up failing on you. Not bad though. Definitely could have been better, but again, for a market that totally sold today. ASTS, I was looking at the 30 level in case we did squeeze. This never triggered 30, so no harm, no foul there. Tesla had some relative strength this morning with China delivery numbers that came out over the weekend, I think on Sunday. We were looking at this through 218, I believe was the pre-market high, which again, I mean, tricky day today. This triggered, paid you, stopped you out, possibly inside 5, and broke. This looks like it might have broken to the downside and then broken back up here for a bullish engulfing 5-minute candle. You possibly could have gotten paid on that. You would have probably gotten stopped out again. And then again, just failed with the market, which pretty much everything did today. But that was okay. Definitely, I think Unity and Tesla would have been a lot better if this market didn't do what they did today. And then we got football season coming up. College football started this past weekend. Although, I don't think you can do like prop bets or bet on specific players. It depends what state you're in. But DraftKings 35, again, with the IWM strength off the open. This triggered off the open, probably stopped you out right away. filled this gap. You're looking at this wedge. Maybe you got paid a little bit, and then once again, probably got stopped out with the market kind of just falling apart here. So nothing too great from those morning plays today, but I don't think anyone was coming into today saying, yeah, Nvidia is going to sell off 10% today with like no real negative news or anything. Hindsight's 2020, but sometimes these things happen. Sometimes these things happen to the upside too, and we're up 2% on the day for no real reason either, right? It's just how the market goes sometimes, and sometimes we're stuck sideways. But that's why you have your game plans, you have your levels, and you respect them. And if you just keep doing that over and over, you're gonna either make decent money, or today was more of a day to avoid an outsized loss. It's not bad to be red on a day. If you're game planning some losses and you're trying to make more than you lose, that's part of the game. You got to accept risk if you're trading. I mean, it's pretty much impossible to not accept any risk if you're trying to actually trade and make money. But you got to respect your game plans. You got to respect your stops. You can get stopped out, and if it looks like a shakeout and it goes back above that key level you're watching, you can rebuy it. And it's better to get stopped twice than it is to lose over 5x what you're trying to lose on something. I've been there and done that many, many times before. I really try not to do that anymore. And I haven't really done that in a while either. So, yeah, I mean, not too much else to talk about. It's just a pure downtrend sell day. Again, I don't think it's going to be like this tomorrow. I'm not saying we trade up all day tomorrow and negate this either. This definitely looks like some damage has been done. We've been sideways for 2 weeks now, and now all that money is out of the water, so there probably is some more unwinding to do. But I wouldn't expect it to just be a pure trend day tomorrow. And yeah, so Jolt's 10 a.m. tomorrow morning is probably the big number that everyone's watching too. So be aware of that. And I think that's all I got today. So happy to take a look at any questions anyone has. Any comments, complaints, concerns, anything like that. Pull up the YouTube real quick. I should be live on YouTube. Hopefully it's working. Looks like it's working. It is working. Cool. Would you look at that? Give myself a little thumbs up. I see Josh sharing some NVIDIA news after hours. NVIDIA gets DOJ subpoena and escalating antitrust investigation. It's probably why it's selling off a little extra hours. Had a little flash lower to 106 there. Brutal day of that. I mean, NVIDIA moved more today than it did post earnings. It's really impressive and honestly a bit shocking. But that's usually when the market really moves in big ways, is when people are caught off sides and don't expect something, right? And today seemed like one of those days. So, yeah, we got that election coming up too. That's probably more something to worry about, either second half of September or October. Not necessarily worry about, but typically we're down into elections and then we trade up after the election. Is this the start of a 2-month down move into the election? It could be. It could be. Calling things multi-months out is when it's in terms of the market macro. It's one thing if you think a stock's undervalued or something, but the macro moves, anything can happen at this point between now and then. So we'll see, but it could be the start of a 2-month down move into the election. Definitely possible. I see a bunch of questions on YouTube, or comments anyway. What's up, Robert? Nice to see you. Surreal, you as well. What's the possible reason of the VIX going higher? What is the probability of continuation, in your opinion? You noticed that the Japan 2020. Yeah, Japan. So that was another. I mean, there was a few things overnight that probably helped at least contribute to the gap down today, and just multiple little things that kind of fell on top of each other. There's a Japan BOJ, I don't know if it was a meeting, a press conference, I forget exactly what it was, but they're talking about raising rates. And that was kind of what triggered that bigger, like real 3-day flash, which we had actually already recovered from as well. And we went sideways for 2 days, but back in like early August, that started with the Japan raising rates stuff. And we saw more of that over the weekend too. As for the VIX, I mean, the market was gapping down today. The VIX was gapping up. Let me see if I can pull up a cash VIX chart real quick. Yeah, we didn't even really. It'd be one thing if we gapped like over last week's highs in the VIX. We didn't even really quite do that. I really think it was just, and maybe I'll go back tonight and realize that I'm missing something. But I really think it was just kind of a snowball effect where we gapped down. We closed really well on Friday. We gapped some of that away. We started to get a little bit heavier in the pre-market and just started to trickle down, and the VIX started to trickle up, and there was not enough, not to keep it simple with like the more sellers than buyers joke that we often make, even though it's not really a joke, it's true. But just one thing leads to another, and you get more sellers coming on, less buyers coming on, so on and so forth, and you just get these trends throughout the day some days. So it's hard to give you just, the VIX gapped up and went higher because of this. I don't think it's really one of those days. We had that Japan news overnight. We had numbers at 9:45 and 10 o'clock, economic numbers that came out that show contraction for the economy. That's not necessarily good, even though that should help the Fed really start to take their foot off the gas pedal. So sometimes we actually trade up on bad numbers. Obviously today it wasn't the day for that. But I really think it was just one thing leading to another, where we closed at the top of that daily range last week, gapped a lot of that away, gapped a lot of Friday's action away today, possibly leaving some people from last week trapped. And then that just led to more selling. And then we tested last week's low, broke last week's low. That led to more selling, broke the 2-week range that we've been in. That led to more selling. You get intraday trend following robots that just kind of add fuel to the fire, that they don't really care what happens tomorrow. They just care about what happens in the next 10 minutes. That adds fuel to the fire, and you just get kind of this snowball effect. And again, that happens on the upside too sometimes, especially with the 0DTE stuff. So yeah, multiple things, not just one thing. What's up, Eric? Would you ever post a sample of a trade sometime? We call things out throughout the day, every day. Derek and myself's positions are live in the virtual trading floor. Maybe we can get you like a free week trial or something so you can take a look at that. But today, I'm trying to think of like a decent example. I mean, today was like a little bit different because we were just trending down throughout the day, all day today. And trades are different too. Sometimes a swing trade is going to be traded a lot different than just a pure day trade on some random name. We are calling things out live in the room though. So try to fit yourself in there if you can. Eric, you can email info@t3live.com and ask them for a week trial, and I think they'll be able to hook you up just fine. Say you found us on YouTube or something like that. But yeah, it's good to see the process for sure. It's interesting. I see Eric saying that Bitcoin is trash on YouTube. Derek would agree. I also do somewhat agree, but I found it interesting to see Bitcoin not trading down that much today. NASDAQ down 3%. you'd think this Bitcoin would be down like 5% or something. And I only noticed that when Coinbase got a somewhat decent call buyer, an opening call buyer at the end of the day today. I think they were weekly 175s. I'd have to go back and look at that order. But Coinbase down, over 7% today. This is a day 1, 2, 3, 4, like a day 6 down here. I definitely thought I was going to type up Bitcoin and see it down big. Not down that much. So honestly, there is some relative strength in Bitcoin coming from today's action. And this IBIT is probably worth watching for a bounce trade. 34 is an IBIT level. 33 some support, which it's testing and kind of barely holding. 34 a level that should probably lead to a squeeze higher if it can get over 34. So while Bitcoin may or may not be trash, it may or may not be gold, it may or may not be nothing, there was some relative strength in Bitcoin today. So it's worth noting, I think. But yeah, definitely feel free to reach out, Eric. Because sometimes trades are just, we're buying through this level versus this stop. Sometimes it's a bit more complicated than that. But in general, have your level, have your game plan, have your stop, and have your risk reward be better than 1-to-1 is the, general guidelines for at least what I'm looking for when I'm trading. And I think that's all I see on YouTube. I don't see a ton more in the VTF either, which is okay. I do need to keep these somewhat shorter. So I'll give everyone another second or so if they want to think of any other questions. Otherwise, we can call it for one of the worst starts to the month. I wonder if this is the worst start to the month we've had all year. It probably is. We've had bigger down days than this calendar year, that's for sure. But in terms of just pure selling with literally zero bounces until this MOC saved us today. If that MOC wasn't to the buy side in that degree, probably would be closing on lows and even lower now. And I see NVIDIA, every time I look at this NVIDIA, it's down another 50 cents or so. NVIDIA mid 105s here now. Talk about damage being done. I mean, sheesh. It is quite an ugly daily candle there. Cool. All right, yeah, I guess looks like I got through everything. So we'll see how we gap. Not sure if world markets are going to see what happened here today and lead us lower, or some of this was a result of what had already happened in world markets from like Monday's session. A little bit. Sorry, just reading something real quick. Yeah, a little bit hard to digest today. Probably a good day to go back and refresh yourself on the news and everything like that. But some weak economic numbers did not help. Bank of Japan raising rates or talking about raising rates again doesn't necessarily help. Breaking Friday's low, breaking last week's low, breaking the 2-week range low obviously doesn't help. Just multiple things leading into one another today that gave us a very brutal downtrend day. So we'll see how they gap us. If they're gapping us down a lot, can probably look for some bounces in the morning. If we're fairly flat gapped, that'll be a little bit tricky, but we'll see what short-term tactical looks like. And if we're gapping up, that's also, I could see a gap up leading to a gap fill on the downside in the morning, but maybe we then don't press too much lower than that. So we'll have to assess that in the morning. And then again, JOLTS jobs numbers tomorrow. I believe it's 10 a.m. those numbers come out, which should move the market a bit at least. So yeah, hopefully everyone survived today. Definitely a brutal start to the month, but sometimes that's how it goes. And hopefully no one got too hurt. I don't think anyone did. I hope not. again, I'm glad that we weren't just trying to buy all day throughout the session today. That would have been exhausting for sure. And hopefully even some Momo shorts were caught too. So we'll see how they gap us tomorrow morning. Have a good night, everybody. See you all tomorrow morning, where we will once again fight the good fight. Not fight too hard, but you know what I mean. So take care. See you guys tomorrow morning.